Welcome to Investors Insights. Our topic today is realistic optimism. We appreciate you joining us here, and I'm joined by my colleagues Bobby Norman, Trey Booth, Adam Van Zant, and Ashley Page. And the reason we chose that topic today is because of the debate that's going on as we go back and forth, looking at the numbers and being realistic, and at the same time looking at the reopening process and the optimism that's out there for us to get back to a normal way of life and earnings and growth. So on that note, first, Bobby, I would like to ask you to start off because you brought some factors in here, question that our clients are constantly asking. Can this market continue to be up there? Can it continue to have stability and hold in the range that it's in?
Yeah, Greg, common question we still receive, can the market hold these levels or possibly go higher, even though we're seeing week after week negative jobs numbers? And so the answer is yes. In fact, history says the strongest forward 6 to 12 month S&P returns followed the worst payroll reports. And so a few historical examples we've analyzed is 2008, 2009. The worst payroll report was in March 2009, but released in early April, and the market was already up 25% off the lows at the time. And then we saw 7 months of job losses following that. And then also 1973, 74. December 74 payroll was worst of that cycle, and the market was already up 15% off the lows, and we saw 4 months of job losses following that. So yes, the market can hold these levels and possibly go higher, even though the payroll numbers continuously come in bad week after week. So again, caution is needed, but it is important to know that the market is forward-looking.
Well, and in our discussions, which got pretty intense this morning, Adam, you brought up the fact, just talk about the consumer, because Bobby's over here saying, that history can repeat itself. We've had scenarios like this before. You brought up a couple of factors about the consumer.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. So the consumer, as we talked about in the past, makes up 70% of the economy. One thing that we all know is that one lagging factor has been consumer confidence. So when you look at retail sales for April they came in lower than expected at 16.4%. We already expected a pretty bad number. For the second quarter GDP, we're seeing estimates from anywhere from 25 to 42% in a drop. So when we're looking at this, the consumer is playing a huge role. When we're seeing these companies start to reopen across the country, and these are public-owned companies, we're also seeing retailers filing bankruptcy.
Right.
So on that side, how's the consumer going to react? It's kind of a catch-22 where they're getting pulled in two different ways. Is there optimism around these companies reopening? And as they're reopening, and some start to not do so well or as well as they expected to, will the consumer kind of be scared or stay away?
So, Adam, those are very valid points. So you got Bobby over here, looking at the optimistic data as how history can repeat itself. Adam, you're talking about, what role is the consumer playing? And then Trey, you brought up that people have to have jobs. Talk about that.
Right. Thanks, Greg. Yes. So last week we in our vlog, we pointed out that we were watching the Thursday unemployment data as a very important tipping point to see if that started to improve. We now have two layers of PPP to come out to keep people employed. We also have started to see job reopenings. Well, the Thursday unemployment data came in worse than expected. And so that was somewhat concerning that all these programs and the slow reopening, we're not seeing people go back to work. Of the 20 million people that lost their jobs in April, 17 million expected they'll get their jobs back. Now, to Adam's point, 3 large retailers filed bankruptcy. It's really hard to see how their jobs are going to come back when there's no company there to rehire them potentially. Mm-hmm. So that's something we're watching very closely as the consumer confidence may start to wane or fall a little bit if we see these jobs not coming back. A key point to watch this week is the auto industry is going to attempt to reopen many of its plants. And why is the auto industry so important? The auto industry creates 6% of the economic output in this country. And so if we should see these auto workers going back to work, hopefully that'll create a drop in this Thursday's unemployment claims. We really need to start seeing some of these numbers improve before we can expect that the low is in, especially from a jobs standpoint. Bobby is very correct that off the worst jobs report of a recessionary period, the market does go higher. The trouble is we don't know when the worst jobs number is until after the fact. And so Was April the worst jobs number of this recession, or will it be May, or God forbid, will it be June? And so I don't want to be too pessimistic, but that's why we're trying to focus on the weekly data as well, because everything's changing so quickly. You have to do as quick a response as you can in this
Well,
market.
I mean, that's why we picked realistic optimism. I mean, let's be realistic in this and looking at the numbers, but optimistic as to which sectors of the economy will actually come back strong. And folks, this is one of the reasons why we do these vlogs, to give you information that you can use each and every day, tying this all together on the news that you hear out there. Ashley, bring up your information in regards to people who are working.
Happy to, Greg. Some of the research that we follow is from a group called Bankrate, and they are very, very good about doing a great survey job of asking the American consumer, where are you really financially with all of this? So, in addition to the unemployment numbers that we've watched, we pay particular attention to their surveys and others like it. Their survey last week basically said that nearly 60% of American households have had no income drop at all. Well, you would rather that be even better, but when you look at all of these just terrible unemployment numbers, there is still a large core of the American economy that has not felt the income drop at all. That's one. And so, why is that important? Because we're going to come out of the backside of this. And when we come out of the backside of this, that's a strong core of people to sort of lead us. The second side data on that is, if you remember in the CARES Act, one thing that they said that people could do with mortgages is that you could take some mortgage forgiveness for 2, 3, 4 months. You eventually have to pay it, but you've got it's a legal term called forbearance. You don't go in default, but you can take a little extra time. Only about 8% of households in the country are doing that. It's not like that rate is 70, 80, and 90%. It's at a very normalized, less than 10% rate. So I think when you see a lot of that, people's income and balance sheet post 2008 crisis, they really cleaned them up. And so they're able to hang with this a lot better, as bad as the unemployment numbers can sound.
Yeah. Well, and really good points there. And, as we go day by day, looking at the data realistically, but also being optimistic as announcements come out about possible, antibodies and vaccines, and we're navigating through all that news because there's still a lot of time to process all this and to actually develop some of the medications needed. At the same time, you've got pent-up demand from that 60% that as they start to reopen, they could help bring the economy back to life. But at the same time, we're watching these business models that just aren't the same the way they used to be. As I like to say, it's not as bad as it seems, and it's not as good as it's going to get. And so balancing that out to have realistic optimism is very important in the coming weeks. We hope you've found this information beneficial. It does apply to the markets, the economy, and ties into portfolios here at File Plan Partners. These are the things that we're looking at constantly, and we're going to keep you updated through our vlogs, through our social media, as well as one-on-one, the phone calls and emails. Please keep your questions coming. And most of all, we cannot thank you enough for forwarding this information to friends, family, colleagues. The response has been tremendous. So thank you so much. Have a great week as we start to finish out May and head towards Memorial Day. Can you believe it? And enter the summer months. Take care. Stay healthy. Talk soon.